Well, what's up again, guys? Brian here at 3TR giving you my first official top list video for 2015. This time, rather, I was requested by one of my awesome viewers to share a few my top 5 video game consoles that I've played over the course of my life. Now, since I've also happened to play handhelds over the course of my life, I just decided to make it consoles and handhelds and just make one entirely cool, awesome list. So starting off real simple with number 5 is a system that I'm sure if you were a Sony person, you might have happened to get. And that was the PlayStation Portable. Now, what I liked about the PlayStation Portable was that, one, it was compatible with the PlayStation 3, and it just seemed like a mini version of it. And it also had a rather good set of games, which unfortunately Sony has kind of made it a little bit obsolete since they've transferred some of those games to the consoles. And overall, I just liked, number one, I liked the overall look, I liked the customization of it. As you can see, I've added those my own personal skin, and there's just a lot of functions about it that really did make it a great, little fun little handheld. I mean, you could attach a camera to it. You could actually attach a wire and be able to play your PSP on your television screen. You could even link your PlayStation 3 to your PlayStation P, so you could actually see the actual screen on your PSP. So it's just the fact that they made it so compatible with the PlayStation 3, and a lot of its games, technically are on the console now, but there are still a few games that are strictly on the PSP that I do happen to come back every once in a while and get a chance to play. Games like, Portable Ops or Dissidia or, Final Fantasy Crisis Core, which why they haven't transferred those over to the console, I don't know, but those are just some of the few reasons why I do tend to go back and play my PSP from every once in a while, and that's why it's number 5 on this list. Going on into number 4 is another portable, which, if you were a Nintendo person, I'm sure you happen to get this one as well, and that is the Game Boy SP. I'm not really sure what the SP was stand for. I don't know, maybe a small pocket. But what I really liked about the Game Boy Advance SP was I like this particular shape a lot better than the original, because if you saw the original Game Boy Advance, it actually looked a lot more like the PSP, and I just didn't like the overall design. And what I really liked about this is that it pretty much was a much better shaped Game Boy. It actually looked like a Game Boy. If you look at it from this one, it actually looks a lot like the original Game Boy. I absolutely love the extra back buttons that kind of gave it a little bit of a console feel to it. And I like the fact that, you could play all sorts of games with it. I could play my original Game Boy Pocket games. I could play my Game Boy Color games. I could play my Game Boy Advance games. And overall, it just, in my opinion, had a much better library collection of games, and it just felt like the proper console to take, or not console, proper handheld to take with you everywhere that fit perfectly into your pocket. And I know that some would like to say that the future editions of the Game Boy, like the Game Boy 3DS, and I don't know what the hell it has right now, I'm not really interested. But I think the problem with those handhelds is that they're just trying to do what the Wii did and try to make, what are innovative ways that we can have players play these games. And although there are certainly a lot of interesting games that it does have, which seem to be just throwbacks of games that you can play on your Game Boy SP, the Game Boy SP really just seemed like the best old school type of Game Boy before we got into the current style of games, because I'm not even sure if you can even play older Game Boy games on the newer ones. I'm not sure, but that's why I love the Game Boy SP so much. Going on into number 3 is also the first, well, maybe not the first, probably one of the best Nintendo systems that Nintendo ever spit out, and that was the Nintendo 64. Now, when 16-bit came to an end, we all knew that the next set of games or consoles that were coming out were going to go for the 3D age. So you had consoles like the Sega Dreamcast, PlayStation, and of course, Nintendo 64. Now, I happened to get the Nintendo 64 first, and I have to tell you that it had unquestionably some of the best games I've ever played. I mean, some of the greatest games of all time that gamers even refer to is on that console. Like, who can forget the most popular Mario game, in my opinion, Mario 64, and you got Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask, and there's just so many great classic games, and GoldenEye, for God's sake. There were so many great games. It really did set the standards of what gaming would become later on. I mean, there were so many revolutionary gameplay style elements that was started on the Nintendo 64, and I don't even think they really caught on to the Sega Dreamcast or the PlayStation until much later in their life. And it really was, overall, it's just kind of the one console that really got me seriously into gaming. I mean, not for the story element, that came when I got the PlayStation, but just in terms of pure enjoyment. And that's why I feel like I have to put this number 3 on this list. Going on into number 2 is a system that I happened to get before the Nintendo 64, but it was the very first console I ever had a chance to play. And to this day, it still remains one of my all-time favorite, and that is the Super Nintendo. Now, before Nintendo 64, and definitely after the 8-bit era, we had the Super Nintendo. This was really, in my opinion, the best 2D 16-bit console they ever made. I mean, some people like to debate which one was better between, the Super Nintendo or the Sega, but Sega, good console, can't touch Super Nintendo. So many amazing games, some of the best side-scrollers, hack and slash, RPGs. I mean, for God's sake, Final Fantasy VI is probably the best RPG out there for the Super Nintendo that I still happen to go back and play on emulators, even though I kind of wish I had my Super Nintendo again so I could play it again, since it's a lot better than playing on a console than it is playing on a computer screen. But I'm getting a side point. Just a lot of fun memories, a lot of nostalgic value to it, and it's a lot of those game elements, a lot of those games still are talked about today. So I just think it's just kind of what the Super Nintendo was able to achieve that makes it such an awesome system, and that's why I had put it as number 2 on this list. And now going on to number 1. Undoubtedly, my all-time favorite console that I've ever owned and played and had for the longest time had to be the PlayStation 3. Now, aside from the point that PlayStation 3 has the number 3 on it, which just happens to be my favorite number, the PlayStation 3 undoubtedly had the best of everything. Number 1, it could do everything. I mean, the difference that I always saw between the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 was just in terms of graphics. That's all. But the leap between PlayStation 2 and 3 was just massive. It could do so many things. It can play Blu-ray, it can play DVDs, it could play... you can store your music on it. You can store your movies on it. You could attach to the PlayStation Network. It had trophies. It had so many additions that were just more than technical that made it such an awesome system that I still do not think the PlayStation 4 is a worthy successor. It just seemed to take away so much that the PlayStation 3 was doing right and wanted to exchange it with a couple other features which I don't even happen to use. And the fact that it had really the beginning of probably the greatest reign of first-party titles in, I think, PlayStation's history is another standing ovation for why the PlayStation 3 is still an awesome system. I mean, heck, I've had my PlayStation 4 for an entire year. I mean, I got it at launch, and to my shock, all throughout 2014, I was still playing my PlayStation 3 more than I was ever playing my PlayStation 4. I mean, for God's sake, I haven't even turned it on in like 2 months. I mean, I had a choice to pick up Assassin's Creed Unity or Assassin's Creed Rogue, and I picked Rogue because Unity just looked like a broken mess. And heck, I'm not holding it against the people at Ubisoft, even though they kind of are doing some things, but that's a topic for another video. But overall, what made the PlayStation 3 so awesome is that it could simply do everything. It had the best library games, it had the best experiences, and really, I really can't think of any other console I would like to play for the rest of my life because it has enough games, it has enough value to last a lifetime. And that is something I truly believe with all my heart and soul. And that is why the PlayStation 3 is undoubtedly my favorite console of all time. And with that, that is my list of my top 5 favorite video game consoles and handhelds. And I really like to know, what are some of your guys' favorite consoles and handhelds? Please share your list with me in the comments down below. And if you have any ideas for a future top list video, be sure to share with me in the comments down below. And if you like this video, free to like, comment down below, and please subscribe to track me in my future top list videos and videos. Like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.